They said the city keeps you safe. Then why is my name on the sirens? 3 seconds. I refused one small bribe and became a threat. The checkpoint lights twitch like insects over a wet street, and the loudspeaker recites curfew as if prayer, as if love, as if a promise that never included people like the boy hiding beneath my staircase. Rules are a spell. You repeat them until your mouth forgets how to shape no. I used to believe in tidy ledgers, signatures straight as rails to carry us somewhere decent. Tonight, a drone pins me in its cone of glassy attention, and the harbor wind tastes like metal. I open the door. I break the spell. Somewhere above, a camera blinks, an answer I'll never see. If safety means obedience to harm, then danger has my voice. Roar. Arse. The bribe was a kindness framed as efficiency. A coin flicked into the gears so the machine wouldn't grind. I refused and heard the teeth catch. Now the school corridors echo with my name, spoken as if I tracked mud across a sacred floor. The handbook says curfew is safety, that identification is trust, that signatures make us real. But tonight, the rain signs for me, and the city answers with a red bead and a list. I tell the stranger to breathe through the panic, count the pulses in his neck, imagine the sea's patience. The loudspeaker chants the hour like a parent who never learned listening. On a tiled wall, a mural's ghostly outline lifts a question from the dark. Who benefits when obedience looks like love? My hand trembles just enough to prove I'm still choosing. Ari paints where the city pretends not to look. They move like rain learning a wall, and the concrete remembers. Each line is a boundary unlearned, each color a refusal to be tidied into fear. I watch from the stairwell, heart drumming against the drone's quiet orbit, and feel the floor tilt. If a picture can make rules blink, what can a ledger do? The stencil reveals a face without a mask, a mouth mid-breath, a gaze tilted toward a dawn that hasn't earned itself. Somewhere, a keypad waits for my code. Somewhere, a uniform waits for my apology. The mural asks me nothing. It simply makes space for my no to stand up straight. Rafik calls it calibration. Decide whose pain gets printed, whose gets filed away. He says a story is a border crossing, and you rarely return with everything you carry. In the noodle shop, he speaks low, and the broth clouds his glasses until truth looks gentler than it is. He warns me about sealed directives stamped with mercy, about numbers that erase the faces that fed them. I want to believe in process the way sailors believe in boys. Bright, fixed, unbribable. Outside, sirens sketch geometry in the rain. Inside, he asks if I have the courage to be wrong in public before I'm right in history. I say the ledger is honest. He asks, to whom? The bulletin hits like a quiet verdict. My name blooms on every corner screen, the font so clean it feels surgical. A person of interest, not guilt, not innocence. A corridor with doors that only lock. The teenage boy squeezes my wrist and asks if I meant what I said about breath. I nod and taste the copper of fear, turning into a decision. Rules are only as holy as the harm they prevent. The drone steadies at my window, awaiting an answer measured in surrender. I consider the ledger, the mural, the soup line, the judged glacier of a gaze. Then I kill the lights. If they want obedience, they will have to come find it in the dark. Surveillance isn't the camera. It's the feeling that your breath has a witness. The morning after the bulletin, my apartment inhales like a suspect. Every pipe, every hinge, every wire suddenly articulate. Miran unwraps a parcel of bread as if it might explode into questions, and Ari paces, trailing rain and paint, making jokes that aren't jokes. Nadia sends a message. The food cards jammed at the checkpoints are no accident. Rafik says patterns are stories wearing numbers. He wants my audit keys to prove it. Outside, the drones loiter like gulls fat from the harbor. Inside, my ledgers turn to maps of harm. names redacted into sums, compliance measured in hunger. If the rule is that order must be seen to be believed, then perhaps disbelief is the only honest disorder left to us. I tell Miran to breathe. I tell Ari we'll move at dusk. I tell myself that secrecy is not a lie when truth is padlocked. We test the edges. Ari says the network breathes through small lungs. Reroute a food card. Free a family for a week. Duplicate a permit. Buy a grandmother time. I watch numbers become calories. Spreadsheets become soup. And the city's rhetoric stained in margins like rust. At the market, Nadia swaps tokens under a ladle's shadow. Her smile a shield the state cannot confiscate. Rafik listens more than he speaks, marking timestamps like footfalls. Miran juggles errands with a grin he doesn't feel. When our spoofed IDs clear a checkpoint that has denied the same faces for months, a hush moves through us that feels like rain after ash. The handbook calls it fraud. My chest calls it repair. But every repair leaves a seam, and seams are places to pull. I pocket the new cards and feel the tug begin. The law library reeks of old promises. Judge Sarah meets Rafik in a corridor of sealed directives, her voice low enough to pass for air conditioning. She doesn't ask for trust. She parcels it like contraband, one phrase at a time. Emergency measures, discretionary revocations, predictive compliance. Words that say nothing and permit anything. I wasn't supposed to hear, but corridors share. Back outside, Miran walks with me in a silence I recognize from nights after our father's arguments. Something tender trying not to break. Ari sketches routes on a receipt, a cartography of alleys and blind corners. Somewhere, a file redraws my life as an algorithm. The city loves data because it never cries. We plan a leak that will make it weep, and I count the risks like lit windows. How many can go dark before the building is a rumor. Storm bands arrive early. Power jitters. The city flickers between honesty and denial. We assemble in Nadia's kitchen, where onions, cumin, and worry perfume the air. The plan is an ecosystem. I unlock the detention fund ledgers. Ari ghosts the route to the relay. Miran ferries decoys. Rafik times the publication. Nadia couples each step to an exit, simple as a heartbeat until the sirens complicate it. Inspector Vale believes order is mercy, and men who love mercy often adore punishment. I imagine his handwriting. Disciplined, beautiful. The penmanship of certainty. There's a moment when the rain slackens and all we can hear is each other breathing. It feels like choosing to be a chord instead of a single note. We nod. The lights stutter. Somewhere, a drone widens its circle. Night swallows the plan and returns it altered. Our spoofed credentials bloom green at 2 checkpoints, then falter at a third where an officer's face is too calm. The relay is a shuttered electronic stall. Tin shutters rattling like teeth. Ari slips behind it. Miran distracts with a delivery argument so vivid I almost believe it. I slide the audit key into a hungry slot, and the system inhales our proof. Detention funds spiraling into private security contracts. Quotas dressed as compassion. Rafik's message, "Go, we move." Then the alley brightens with a disciplined quiet that isn't weather. Vale steps into the frame of the world like a punctuation mark you can feel in your bones. He offers a smile that belongs on a warning label. "Lena," he says, as if returning lost property. Somewhere above us, the rain remembers how to fall. The file arrives folded into the pauses between sirens. Anonymous, meticulous, cruelly calm. It lays out my crimes as if they happened before I was born. Curfew taunts, tampered ledgers, harbor meetings with ghosts who never learned my name. Each page is a mirror angled to show a stranger with my signature. Rafik breathes through it like a diver, surfacing with timestamps that disagree with themselves. Witness statements cut from the same dull cloth. A photograph whose shadow points the wrong direction. He says, fabrication has a smell once you've learned it. I smell disinfectant and fear. Somewhere between the dates and the decrees is the hand that needed me guilty to keep the gears content. Ari's message flashes a mural swelling across concrete. the unmasked face now crowned with lines like radiating breath. If truth is a stray dog, then tonight it has found our door, wet and shaking, asking to be let in. Vale invites me to a conversation the way a cliff invites gravity. The room is the color of obedience, a soft gray that does not argue. He speaks gently about order as if it were a sleeping child. He says I can be cleared with a signature and a little cooperation, that mercy travels faster when unencumbered by doubt. He offers the word informant like a clean towel after a drowning. My ledger hand twitches, remembering the stroke of an honest line. My other hand remembers the boy's pulse beneath his skin. I ask what happens to names once they are given. He says they are protected. The drone of the air unit outside is a tensed violin string. I imagine Nadia's soup turning cold, Ari's paint drying into evidence, Moran's grin collapsing into a booking photo. Vale calls me sensible. I tell him I'm tired of being reasonable in a room that never is. The gray grows deep. We breathe on the edge of a storm made of people. Ari's mural multiplies, face after face on underpasses and school walls, until the city's blank spaces learn to speak. Children touch the painted cheek as if testing for warmth. Vendors arrange their stalls beneath the gaze like sailors reading constellations. The broadcast calls it vandalism. The block calls it a mirror. Rafik maps the spread against outage reports and patrol routes, and finds a pattern like a heartbeat. Miran laughs for real for the first time in days, then sobers when the drone pauses too long. I inventory the costs. The knock on Nadia's door, the file that grows fangs, the judge whose eyes refuse the comfort of sleep. If rules keep order but forbid repair, what should be repaired first? The mural breathes back a wordless answer. Keep going. Sometimes courage is just motion in the direction of honesty. The detention fund ledger opens like a throat and tells us what it swallowed. Debits to shell entities with generous names, credits to contractors who sell fear, dressed as security, invoices stamped urgent in the same font as the word mercy. I know this language. Columns that refuse to look at the faces that paid them. We trace a payment chain into a cul-de-sac of private access gates, and the numbers begin to repeat like a prayer recited without faith. Rafik wants one more corroboration. I find it in a footnote that forgot to be erased. Judge Sarah's rulings thread through everything like wire, lawful, cold, aching with the limits she hates. I press my palm to the paper until the ink warms. If I sign this leak, Miran becomes a target-shaped noun. If I don't, the city keeps feeding on itself and calling it protection. The storm leans closer to the glass. Vale returns with a softer voice and a sharper choice. He says the city can't afford both justice and peace. Pick one and sign for it. He places the fabricated file beside my real ledger, like two maps of the same coastline. One with lighthouses, one with reefs. He offers witness protection that sounds like a padded cell, an exit that smells like erasure. I look at the door and think of Ari's murals multiplying in the rain, of Nadia counting portions so families make it to Monday, of Moran learning to walk past fear without shaking it awake. The deal is clean, which is how I know it's dirty. I push the folder back and say no, and the word fills the room like weather. Vale nods as if he expected this and thanks me for my clarity. The drone outside tilts, listening for the sound rules make when they crack. By afternoon, the sky is a bruise. The city, a body that won't admit it's hurt. Power jitters like a guilty heartbeat. Every window blinks a different truth. We meet in the kitchen that smells of cumin and rain-soaked coats and lay the plan out one last time as if repetition could make it gentle. Rafik calibrates the clocks. His voice a line we can walk without looking down. Ari traces routes that fold through alleys like origami birds. Miran jokes until the joke refuses to arrive, then nods and pockets the decoys. Nadia counts exit doors the way some count blessings. I hold the audit key and think of all the hands it will pass before it lands where it can't be burned. Somewhere, A directive waits to turn our movement into a misunderstanding. Somewhere, a man who loves order is sharpening his patience. The storm presses its forehead to the glass. We exhale together and the lights go out as if the city has decided to trust us. We divide like raindrops at a gutter's edge, each of us choosing a fall. The relay sits behind a shuttered stall where radios once traded songs. Now it trades consequences. I feel the city calculating, assigning probabilities to our footsteps. Ari moves first. A whisper disguised as a person and wedges the back gate with a painter's confidence. Rafik goes the street, a shadow that collects facts the way docks collect ropes. Miran argues with a vendor for show. And for a moment, I want to buy the lie that this is ordinary. I feed the ledger into the throat of the machine and listen for the click that means someone else can finally hear what we've been screaming without sound. The power surges, the screen blinks, and a tide opens in my chest. Then the horizon changes. Uniforms don't hurry, they arrange. The rain holds its breath. I pocket the drive and understand we have already crossed the line where plans become history. The raid begins as courtesy. A line of officers forms with the grace of choreography. The first siren is quiet enough to pass for etiquette. Vale arrives last because authority prefers the final word to the first. He thanks the rain for its cooperation and asks for my surrender with a smile that would complement a well-ordered spreadsheet. I could offer the smaller losses, myself for Miran, silence for time. The city is fluent in trades that taste like mercy and digest like ash. Ari inhales, about to leap into a bad decision on my behalf. Nadia would call that love and tell me to let it pass through. Rafik lifts his phone. Live. And suddenly, the raid has witnesses it didn't invite. My name lands on the loudspeaker again, but this time it doesn't sound like mine. It sounds like a test of echo. I decide to fail it. I step backward into the alley's throat and pull the night closed around us. Running is a kind of grammar. Breath becomes punctuation. Corners become conjunctions. We splice alleys together and pray the sentence carries. Ari flicks paint across a camera dome and the eye goes blind. Miran shoulders a crate that is only a crate until someone decides it's evidence. Rafik folds his presence into a crowd and resurfaces beside me like a footnote you can't ignore. Sirens find new keys and improvise. I imagine Judge Sarah at her desk, signing the paper that makes this hunt legal, and hating every stroke for how beautifully it obeys. The plan frays, but holds. Nadia's map gives us a gap no wider than a promise, and we slide through with the awkward grace of people who have not yet learned to be fugitives. Overhead, the expressway thunders its old hymn. Beneath it, we swear a new one under our breath. Stay small, stay moving, stay true. We reach the river mouth where the city forgets to pretend. The storm finally commits, hammering the water flat, then tearing it again. Our cash slips into the courier's hands, a sequence of files that read like a confession written by an institution that thinks it's God. Rafik schedules the release for the hour when the city is too tired to lie quickly. Ari grins at the thunder as if they coached it. Miran tries to hide a shiver that isn't from the rain. I think of Sarah's careful pen and veils, careful smile, and Nadia's careful kindness. And I understand that care is a blade you can hold by either edge. The leak goes live. Screens light beneath tarps and umbrellas, and a gasp rolls down the quay like wind changing mind. Somewhere, a door unlatches. Somewhere else, one locks. We stand in that hinge, soaked and certain, while the city decides what to call us in the morning. Betrayal arrives like good manners. A neighbor brings tea no one asked for, sets it down on a coaster, and leaves the door slightly open. The leak has teeth, and the city tastes blood, so the story shifts. Our faces cropped into predators. Our work recut as appetite. Nadia says the line for soup shrank overnight. People don't want to be seen near her kindness. Ari's last message is a joke about umbrellas that reads like a goodbye. Rafik calls the smear campaign inevitable, but inevitability is just a choice rehearsed until it feels holy. Miran stands at the window counting the time between sirens as if they were thunder. and we could measure distance from a storm that refuses to stay put. Wait, I find a note taped beneath my kettle. 4 words in neat block letters. Check your own house. The kettle begins to sing. I lift the lid and find nothing but steam and the shape of doubt rising. The arrest is almost tender. 3 officers ask for Mireille. Laboué librarians ask for a book, with titles and cross-references already memorized. He smiles his old childhood apology smile, the one that used to fix broken vases, and it breaks me now. I ask for the warrant. They show me confidence. I ask where. They say processing. I ask when. They say soon. And soon is a word that can hold a century if you let it. Downstairs, the neighbor, who brings tea, watches with a sympathy that never fully arrives. Rafik arrives late, rain stitched into his beard, and whispers that they're sweeping brothers first, kinship converted to leverage. The elevator doors close on Miran's grin, and the floor under my feet discovers a new depth. The kettle's song won't stop, metal touching heat without rest. When the hallway empties, I pick up his jacket from the chair. It is damp and heavier than fabric has any right to be. Ari vanishes between one heartbeat and the next, a message thread ending mid-sentence with a photograph of a mural that looks like a door. Fear has a scent, ozone and old paper, and it crawls under the door frames while the city's anchors talk about predators with perfect diction. Nadia stacks bowls no one will claim, and each clink sounds like a name falling out of a registry. Rafik argues for patience. Let the documents walk through the corridors. Let Syra swallow the rulings whole and taste the metal. But patience feels like consenting to someone else's timeline for your lungs. I pace the rooms, counting my mistakes the way auditors count decimals and arrive at the same total. I believed decency could be negotiated with people who measure worth in obedience. The window shows the expressway like a knife laid flat. I press my forehead to the glass and tell the empty room that Ari is not a missing person. Ari is a returning storm. I find Rafik on the bridge where the wind hallucinates voices and the lights pretend to be stars. I bring the ledger and bring my temper, and only one of them behaves. I tell him he published too soon, that the leak needed one more stitch to keep the facts from unraveling in hostile hands. He says the truth was already drowning, and sometimes you drag it to shore ugly or not at all. We talk in sentences that arrive without verbs, as if action were treason. Cars hiss by, the city breathing through its teeth. I ask if he weighed the cost in brothers and artists and women who keep keys under kettles. He nods and refuses to apologize for saving lives I haven't met yet. Between us hangs the thin, humming wire of what trust survives argument. I tell him I will not forgive a timing that took Miran. I also tell him I will not give Vale the satisfaction of our silence. Both are true. Both are knives I learned to carry. The city learns our names too well and forgets our faces. Neighbors avoid eye contact the way you avoid puddles that might be deeper than they look. Posters appear, predators in plush fonts, framing us as appetites that require cages. I imagine surrender like a dress rehearsal for erasure. You practice absence until it fits. If turning myself in buys Miran a smaller cage, what measure of love is that? Arithmetic or faith? Nadia says love that bargains with cruelty teaches cruelty new prices. Judge Sirah's latest order threads the needle so cleanly I almost admire the stitch. Then I remember who bleeds. I take Miran's jacket from the chair and try it on. It smells like laundry and rain and the part of childhood that survived. I stand at the window and count sirens until the number becomes prayer. My reflection looks like someone who has decided something, and it frightens me how quiet the decision feels. Courtrooms pretend to be neutral by choosing pretty wood. Ours smells like polish and thunder, a sanctuary built to forgive the rules for what they do after hours. Rafik sits behind me, a metronome of breath. Nadia's hands knot a cloth she can't stop folding. Sirah sends the bench with a gaze that could level scaffolding, and Vale occupies a front-row silence that behaves like applause. I lay out the ledger as if it were a patient and begin the surgery. Line items sutured to shell companies, emergency invoices grafted to private contracts, dates that hemorrhage when touched by daylight. The projector flickers, and the city's hunger shows its teeth. Vale smiles the way a locked door smiles. Certain I don't have the key. Then I name the mechanism, not the men. I indict the design, not its operators. The room shifts. Even the rain seems to lean in. Sierra's pen stops moving. For a breath, the rules themselves look startled. Sierra calls a recess that feels like a held breath. In chambers, the law strips to the waist and shows its scars. She tells me precedent is a cage that promises safety from wolves while forgetting who owns the wolves. I tell her the ledgers were designed to invent criminals and hire guards to discover them. She touches the sealed directives with a tenderness usually reserved for photographs of the dead. If I break the frame, she says, the picture falls. I answer that the picture fell a long time ago. They just trained us to admire the empty frame. Outside, Vale lingers like weather that refuses to choose a season. He offers deference with the confidence of a man who believes he is the weather. Sire looks at me the way a surgeon looks at a scalpel. Not as salvation, but as a tool that knows pain's exact dimensions. When we return, her eyes refuse comfort. She asks me to continue. The gallery murmurs dies when Ari appears in the aisle, rain still tattooing their sleeves. Eyes bright with a dare they fully intend to keep. They hand Rafik a drive like a candle offered to a dark room, then look at me and nod as if we are finishing a sentence begun on a rooftop. The screen fills with procurement emails that smell of greed and talc, with phone logs that flirt at midnight, with a photo of a contractor's yacht berthed under a public safety banner. Vale does not blink, which is a kind of confession. I narrate the sequence like a tide chart. Funds in. Fear out. Fear in. Contracts out. Ari's mural flashes last. A face unmasked projected across the courthouse facade, lines of breath widening until even the exits look like entrances. The room inhales as one organism. For a moment, I think. Maybe rules can blush. Vale pivots to the only argument that survives evidence. Order as compassion. Chaos as cruelty. He names the times the sirens actually saved someone. The night's fear folded itself into a cradle instead of a weapon. He is not wrong, which is why he is dangerous. I answered that a system can rescue a child and cage 1,000 parents while calling it balance. The rain drums like a jury with no foreperson. Sierra's questions arrive with surgical patience. Who signed? Who profited? Who decided harm was economical? Rafik feeds her the citations. Ari feeds the room oxygen with the fact of their return. I feel the ledger's weight lift from proof into conviction. Not legal, not yet, but moral enough to turn strangers into witnesses. Vale's smile cools into math. He requests a continuance and receives a clock that suddenly belongs to us. The price is exactly what I feared, and more merciful than I deserve. To free Moran before the machine learns a new appetite, I sign away the papers that declare me real. Citizenship retracted, identity archived like a misprinted page. The clerk's stamp sounds like a small door closing somewhere I won't live again. Moran stumbles into my arms in a corridor that smells of wet wool and coffee, all grin and tremor, apologies shaking loose from his mouth. I tell him he owes me nothing but the ordinary miracle of not becoming who they say we are. Nadia laughs and cries inside the same breath. Rafik looks away to give us privacy he cannot actually grant. Ari touches my shoulder, a promise of roots I haven't learned yet. When we step into the evening, the rain has remembered how to be gentle. The city is unchanged and newly possible. I am less citizen, more compass. Sometimes the way back is forward into exile. By morning, the city is a throat-clearing truth. It still isn't ready to speak. Screens bloom with our leak, and the avenues answer in drumbeats, umbrellas and handmade placards that misspell salvation in ways that feel more honest than policy ever did. The ministry posts reforms that read like apologies written by committees. The ink dries without touching the wound. I move through the crowd as if through weather, brushed by strangers who know my name but not my face, buoyed by chants that sound like waves trying to remember the shore. Nadia hands bowls through barricades as if mercy were a verb. Ari's murals become landmarks people use to meet each other safely. Rafik files updates that refuse sensation and choose clarity. Somewhere inside a sealed room, precedent rehearses its lines. The bay keeps breathing. I had wanted change to look like dawn. Instead, it looks like endurance with a pulse and a question. How much truth can a city keep standing? Goodbyes shrink the world to the size of a hand on a shoulder. We meet in the warehouse that smells of salt and rope and agendas too fragile for daylight. Miran jokes until the joke runs out of places to hide. Then he says he'll keep the plants alive and the kettle whistling, and he will not forgive me if I stop eating. Nadia presses food into a bag and faith into my pocket. Rafik, awkward with tenderness, promises to misquote me if it keeps us safer. Ari maps a route across water and names the stars the city can't shut off. I count breaths like receipts and try to believe in boats more than borders. Exile is just a compass pointed at a place that doesn't know your name yet. I practice saying mine out loud. The tide knocks the pilings twice like a warning, then once like permission. It feels like leaving a room mid-argument and trusting the truth to finish the sentence without me. The ruling arrives like rain on hot stone, hiss first, then steam. Sarah threads the needle so the cloth survives, even if the wound shows. She cites the ledgers, names the contracts, narrows the directives' teeth until they can no longer tear without leaving fingerprints. It is not the revolution I wanted. It is the leverage we needed. The gallery tries to decide whether to clap for a compromise. The city chooses to breathe. I imagine the pen in her hand, the weight of a word like thereby, the ache of a conscience that cannot afford applause. Laws are boats. Some ferry you across some circle. You until you forget the other shore exists. When she looks up, her eyes refuse triumph. And that, too, is a kind of courage. Outside, chants modulate into a quieter key, less victory than vow. I think of how many lives need ordinary safety more than grand justice, and I bless the smaller hinge that opened. Veil does not break. He adjusts, which is more dangerous. We meet by accident that feels like design. Two people pausing beneath an overpass while the city negotiates with thunder. He offers no apology because none is needed to continue the world he prefers. He says order will heal in time and that my exile will be a footnote. The city forgets to read. I tell him footnotes are where scholars hide the truth they can't afford to announce. He smiles, not unkindly, and wonders aloud how many rules I still obey without noticing. I think of doors I lock, of lines I won't cross, of the temptation to become a mirror image of what I fight. He leaves with the ease of a man confident that history loves uniforms. I watch the runoff find its path along the curb and decide to be water anyway. Patient, shaping, relentless, uninterested in permission. Some antagonists you defeat, some you outlast. Dawn arrives shy as if sorry to be seen. The boat is small enough to teach humility and sturdy enough to carry it. Miran hugs me hard and makes me promise to argue with him by message about nothing. Recipes, shoes, the best routes through storms. Nadia slips a last note into my palm. Eat, rest, choose softness when brutality asks for proof. Rafik says the story will continue whether I watch it or not. He'll try to keep it honest. Auri ties the bowline like a poem and whispers a new map into my ear. The engine coughs, then believes. The city recedes, a geometry of scaffolds and sunlit fumes, a place that tried to measure worth in obedience and found a ledger that disagreed. I think of rules as bridges. Some you cross, some you jump from, some you dismantle to build rafts. Exile is a sentence without a period. Meaning comes from how you breathe between clauses. I breathe, and the horizon answers.